Hi, this is Robert with Fly High Paramotors. Today I'm going to talk about buying a used paramotor. So what we're going to talk about is used paramotors buyer's guide / warning. I get a lot of people calling me and emailing me for questions about used paramotors, and they're always trying to find good deals out there. But that's in reality, it's pretty hard to find a good used paramotor. So what I have done is I've come up with some guidelines from my experience on how to find a good used paramotor. Because a lot of times the people are coming into the sport to fly a paramotor. They're new pilots, and the first thing they want to do is try to save some money, so they want to buy a used paramotor. But they don't realize that buying a used paramotor comes with a lot of challenges and potential problems, because our sport is a pretty small sport, and to put it in as simple as possible, sometimes you might buy a used paramotor and not find any service or customer service for it, or any parts for that paramotor. So I have came up with this guideline called Used Paramotor Buyer's Guide / Warning. And as you can see here on the screen, I'm going to I kind of jotted down some things that over the time of my experience that I found that if you ask these questions and you do your research, you can get into a better position. Okay, so let's start. Number one, is it a custom-built paramotor frame? If it's a custom-built paramotor frame, good luck getting frame parts for the paramotor frame. It's as simple as that. If you buy something that somebody built in their garage, they put together that frame, they welded it, it's a custom frame, and you see it, and it's for sale for like $2,000 or $3,000. There's a reason for that. It's a custom built frame. If you break it, you're out of luck. So you won't be able to get any parts for it unless you can actually bend aluminum pieces and weld the cage pieces together and make the same cage piece that you need to replace. So yes, it might be cheap, but then there's no parts for it, and you're going to be stuck to trying to manufacture a custom piece if you ever bend a cage piece or break any cage pieces for the paramotor. Number two, can you get parts for the paramotor frame? Is the paramotor frame still in production? Is there a way to get cage section / main frame / medic? Again, going back to the paramotor frame itself, if you're buying a used paramotor and the frame isn't being made anymore, sometimes you can't get any parts for it. So if that particular model is 5 or 6 years old and that paramotor frame isn't in production anymore, even if that company is in business that made that older paramotor frame, sometimes they won't manufacture any parts or frames for that paramotor anymore. So again, you're stuck and you can't get any frame parts. So if you have an accident, you're stuck. You won't be able to find any parts or any parts for the frame. So again, you'll have to do the custom manufacturing to be able to fix your paramotor so you can fly again. Number three, where is the paramotor frame manufactured? If you buy a paramotor that is made in Europe or China or some other foreign country, be ready to order and import parts and speak to someone that might not speak a word of English. Okay, so that is what basically starts to happen. A lot of the paramotor frames and paramotor engines are manufactured in Europe. So that's where the sport originally came from. Most of all the big paramotor manufacturers are located in Europe. Most of the paramotor manufacturers that are started up are based out of Europe. And from my experience, I find a lot of manufacturers come online from Europe, and within a year or 2 years, they're gone. So they existed for 1 year or 2 years or three, and then they're nowhere to be ever found again. They close shop, and they don't offer any service anymore. So when looking at a used paramotor, you have to see where it's made. If it's made in Europe or China or some other foreign countries, make sure that company is still exists. Then also look, is there any US dealers around that support that product? Because if there is no dealer that supports that cage or that engine that's on your paramotor that you just bought used, you will have to contact the country where the paramotor was manufactured from and deal with them directly to import parts for your cage frame and for your paramotor engine. Now this is easier said than done, because a lot of times when I order custom paramotors for myself to test them from Europe, and there's no other dealers around here, so I'm the one importing it directly. I have to be totally self-reliant on, if I break that cage, I have to contact the person in Europe and get parts, and then that's still, it's all really hard, because sometimes you contact some guy in Europe that you ordered that paramotor from, and they speak very little English, and it's hard to communicate with them, and then you have to ship something from Europe to, let's say to America. So if you ship something from Europe to America, then you run into most of the time high expenses in shipping costs, and then you have to deal with customs and taxes. So that's all something you have to deal with. When you import a cage piece or a paramotor or an engine, you're going to run into customs, and they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. You're going to have to fill out paperwork. Then things get stuck down in customs because they don't know what you're trying to import. They have to figure out how much it costs so you're not jipping customs and stuff like that. So everything gets bogged down. I've had where I've ordered paramotors and paramotor parts that were stuck in customs for a month just because customs was trying to figure out how much that part is worth, and stuff like that. So it can get really, really frustrating and confusing to deal with it yourself when you have to import stuff from Europe. So that's something to keep in mind. Where is the paramotor engine manufactured? Where is the paramotor frame manufactured? Okay. Again, if you're going to where is the paramotor engine manufactured, if the engine is manufactured in another country, in Europe, and you just bought a used paramotor that nobody else sells here in America or in your country, there's no support for it, you're going to have to go back to the origin of that paramotor engine and the frame and talk to them over there and then import parts back. So what I'm just trying to get a point here is, a lot of the attractions for a used paramotor is the initial cost. That you see a used paramotor that might cost $3,000 or $2,000 or $4,000, whatever it may be, and people jump on and say, "Hey, look, I can get into the sport for $3,000, and I don't have to spend $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 on a new paramotor." But they don't stop to think about all the problems that they run into later on. If there's no support for that used paramotor that you just bought, you're totally relying on yourself now to contact people from overseas, deal with them, deal with customs, deal with shipping, and all that stuff to get you back on the road if something happens. So imagine buying a paramotor for even $3,000, and finally summertime comes around, and you have a bad landing, and you break a cage piece, you break a propeller, your engine breaks, and all of a sudden there's no customer service anywhere around. You got to go back to Europe and call them and figure out a way to order parts. That can take anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks or even more to get something in. So now you're stuck and you're not flying. Summertime is here, and it's really frustrating. So let's go down to, is the engine still in production that is on your paramotor? Number 5. Again, if you're buying a used paramotor, you have to look at every single aspect of that paramotor. If the engine is not being made, chances are you will not get parts for it, and your motor breaks, you're out of luck. It's as simple as that. If you bought a paramotor that was produced 4 years ago or 5 years ago, or sometimes even 2 years ago, since it's a small sport, even the engine manufacturers will manufacture an engine for 2-3 years, stop manufacturing that engine, and some of them, if it's a smaller engine manufacturer, they won't even carry parts for that motor anymore. So that's all something to consider. So let's go down to number 6. Is the company that made the paramotor still in business? Excuse all the spelling mistakes here. Just correcting it as I see them. Okay, so is the company that made the paramotor still in business? If the company that made the paramotor is not in business, you will not have any customer support. Simple as that. So if you buy a $3,000 paramotor, at first it seems like a great deal, but then you turn around and find out there's no service. I can't get any parts for the cage. I can't get any parts for the motor. The minute something happens to your motor or your paramotor, you're done. You just blew $3,000 and you can't fix it. So it'll be sitting in the back of your garage and be collecting dust. And the worst part about it is you can't even really sell it because you know that there's no customer support for it and no parts for it. So it's like if you sell it to somebody else, it's either you tell them that or you kind of do it shady and rip them off essentially, because that's what a lot of people who are selling used paramotors fail to mention to somebody that's buying it. Hey, I bought this paramotor about 3 years ago. This company no longer exists and there's no parts for it. But a lot of people don't tell potential buyers that. They just want to get rid of their paramotor. So they put it up for $3,000. Somebody comes along, thinks it's a great deal, and they're out of luck the minute something happens. Number 7. So, is there customer service for the used paramotor? Basically, same thing again. Make sure whatever used paramotor you're buying, the company for the used paramotor is still in business. I can't keep stressing it enough. It doesn't matter if you spend $2,000, $3,000, or $8,000 on a paramotor. If the paramotor you're buying breaks down on you, or you have a bad landing or a bad takeoff and you're going to break a propeller or break a cage piece, you need to buy parts for it. So when looking to buy a used or new paramotor, you have to see, where is this paramotor being manufactured? Is there dealers around that I can turn to get service for if the paramotor breaks? Can I get engine parts? Can I get cage pieces? So the truth of the matter is, even when you're buying a new paramotor, if you don't do your research properly, you can get a new paramotor that is being imported from Europe by maybe one individual dealer, but that dealer doesn't stock any parts for that paramotor. Reason being, to stock parts costs money. It costs thousands of dollars to have cage pieces, to have pistons, piston rings, seals, blocks, gaskets. All this stuff costs money. And a dealer that doesn't do enough volume will import a paramotor from Europe, but will fail to stock parts for it. So if you buy the wrong paramotor, even if it's new, and that dealer doesn't stock parts for it, usually you can get parts for it, but what ends up happening is you might need to wait for 1, 2, 3 months before you get that part, because it's a custom order from Europe and it takes time to get it. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so number 8, compare the cost of a used paramotor to a new paramotor. You can find brand new paramotors starting as low as $5,000 with a 1-year warranty and customer service. So sometimes, when people are, when you look around and you see a $3,000 paramotor or $2,000 paramotor or $4,000 paramotor, when you stop and think about it for a little bit and see, what's going on with that paramotor, and you follow this guideline and you find out that there is no customer service for that paramotor, that engine isn't being produced anymore, that cage isn't being produced anymore, I'm not going to be able to get any parts for the cage or the engine if something breaks, then you have to ask yourself, why would it be worth it to spend $2,000-$3,000 for a used paramotor when the minute something happens, you're out of luck, you're done flying. So at that point, if that is the kind of used paramotor that you find, it's not even worth to buy it. If you do your research, you can find brand new paramotors starting from as low as around $5,000, and usually they come with a 1-year warranty and customer service. At Fly High Paramotors, we have paramotors starting from $5,600 that are really well built. Amazing engines on it. They have customer service. We can get parts for it. So, if you do your research, you can find really good new paramotors for really a good price. The new paramotors prices have come down, and typically a good new paramotor starts from around $5,000 and goes up. But remember, customer service and parts. That's the key when you're buying any paramotor, new or used. If you can get customer service and parts, then think about which paramotor to get. But if you can't get one of those two, then don't even buy it. So again, going back to the used paramotor, how old is the used paramotor? If it's an old used paramotor, chances are high you will not find parts for the frame or motor. Lots of people are selling used paramotors that are 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. So if you buy a paramotor like that, chances are there is no parts for that cage and there is no parts for that motor. So you spend a couple $1,000s on that paramotor, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, and you're stuck with it the minute something happens with it, and you most likely won't even be able to resell it. That's the other thing about considering when you buy a new paramotor. If you spend $5,000, use it for about a year, you can usually sell it for $1,000 less. So you used it for a year, spend $5,000, and turn around and sell it for $4,000. So you don't lose that much money in between the time you've owned it and used it. But if you buy a used paramotor, you can spend $3,000 or $4,000 on a used paramotor, and if there's no parts for it and you find that out later, you're stuck with it. You just lost $3,000 or $4,000 instead of losing only $1,000 on a new paramotor. So the resale is better on a new paramotor than on a used paramotor most of the times anyway. Number 10. What modifications have been done to the paramotor / damage? Some people who buy a paramotor like to do modifications to their paramotor, which can affect safety and performance of the paramotor, not to mention poorly self-repaired paramotor frame, harness, propeller repairs. So this is something I see a lot. People will buy a paramotor and then they'll figure out a way to modify it because they think they can basically come up with a better / improvement to the paramotor that they bought. So they end up tweaking the frame, they end up trying to tweak the harness. But I've seen stuff like the harness was modified or was repaired because something got broke or cut on it, and they stitched it up themselves, and I can see the stitching on it is not even nearly good to have that on the harness. And again, lots of people have come into problems with their paramotor cage where they get in an accident and bend stuff and break stuff, and they end up welding it themselves, and they don't really do a good job, so it's not really strong anymore, that weld and the cage. So anytime you're buying a used paramotor, you should ask, is there any modifications done to this paramotor? Has there been any damages to the paramotor that have been repaired? Know what has been repaired or modified, just so you know what to expect when you get it. Okay, number 11, power of the used paramotor engine. Does the used paramotor you're thinking of buying have the right amount of power for your weight? Is it overpowered for your weight or underpowered for your weight? You will need to consider this. So a lot of times when you're buying a used paramotor, it's you find a deal, and you think it's a good deal, but then you find out the paramotor engine doesn't have enough power for you, or the engine is too powerful for you. In the paramotor world, not one engine fits all. So if the engine doesn't have enough power, it's not good for the big guy. If the engine has too much power, it's not good for the little guy. So you have to match up the power of that engine to your weight. Otherwise, you run into lots of problems. You run into the unit being too powerful for you. You're getting too much torque steer, all kinds of stuff. It's heavy for you. Obviously, if you're a small guy and you weigh only 100, anywhere between 130 to 140 or 50, you don't want to be carrying around a 70-pound paramotor. You want to get a lightest possible paramotor for you, because you can get away with flying a smaller, lighter engine. So match up the paramotor's engine power to your weight. All right. 12. What is the hang point setup on the paramotor? Different paramotors come with different hang points. You have to know which one is going to be good for you, and without kind of going through training and understanding the differences between high hang points, low hang points, it's kind of hard to know what you're getting. So that's something to consider also. And this is actually by far one of the most important things in your paramotor is your hang point, because this will always affect how you're flying the machine, and the way it responds to you and the feedback you get from your wing. Typically lower hang points give you more feedback. You can turn better, sharper, faster. High hang point, it's kind of a more relaxed type flying. You don't have as much agility, but you don't feel as much feedback from your glider than you would in a low hang point. Personally, I only like to fly low hang point units, and I usually recommend to fly low hang point units to most new pilots. Anyway, number 13, build quality of the used paramotor. Is the design of the paramotor any good? Is a paramotor built with good materials? A lot of times, if you're buying a used paramotor, back in the day, and I'm only talking about 4 years, and then you go back even more than that, 5, 6, 7 years, it just gets worse. Back in the day when they first started making the paramotors, they were super heavy. They used really crappy materials, and stuff like that. So, and then on top of that, how is the paramotor designed? Does it have good netting? Is the cage strong? Is it a single loop cage? Is it a double loop cage? All this affects on how strong that paramotor is when you have a impact or when something goes wrong. I mean, there are paramotors that are really light, or even worse, there's paramotors that look light, but they're actually not light when you weigh it, but they're very poorly designed, single loop frame, very, very flimsy netting, and the minute you have a problem, they will self-destruct on you and cost you hundreds of dollars. So that's something to keep in mind too when you're looking at a new or used paramotor. That doesn't matter if it's used or new. Checking how good that frame is will make a big difference and can potentially save you a lot of money down the road. Okay, and last 14, how many hours on the used paramotor engine? If you buy a used paramotor engine, it has a lot of hours on the engine. Chances are you will need to rebuild or do maintenance on the engine soon. This will cost you more money, and you might not even be able to get parts. So again, when buying a used paramotor, you don't necessarily know how much hours there is on that paramotor. You rely on the seller to say, hey, it only has 4 hours or 5 hours on it. Meanwhile, it can have 40 hours on it, and you're already approaching the maintenance point on that engine, or you're already way past it. You just don't know, because usually there's no gauges on this paramotor engine to know how many hours it has been flown. So you could buy a used paramotor, get into it cheap, but then very quickly find out it had a lot more hours than you thought it had on it, and you need to do repairs on it and maintenance on it. So, and then if there's no parts for that used paramotor, you're out of luck. You can, watch your paramotor sit in the garage for the rest of its life, because you'll never find any parts for it, most likely. So, always do your research. I hope this 14 guidelines will help you out. I'm going to post it on my website at www.flyhighparamotors, and I'm going to post this whole article on it, and the video, and kind of look over it and read it over again to yourself, and then ask these questions before you buy that used paramotor or even a new paramotor. And last but not least, the last advice I can give you is paramotor training. Don't skip on it just because you're trying to save money. You'll most likely end up paying for it big time. A lot of times when you're getting into this sport, if you don't have good training and you didn't learn the skills from the beginning, it's what causes you to break gear and not ever really truly learning how to fly properly. And that costs you a lot of money. In this sport, our paramotors aren't the most strongest things in the world, so if you fall on them, they will break, they will bend, pop, and do all kinds of funny stuff to you. So, a very small problem can turn into a very expensive problem. A broken propeller and a broken cage piece can easily set you back between $500 to $700. So again, you'll have to get parts and make sure you can find those parts on that new or used paramotor you're considering to buy. So if any of you guys have any more questions, feel free to give me a call. All my info is on flyhighparamotors.com. Check the website out. I have really good brand new paramotors for sale. Sometimes I have even used paramotors for sale. You can check out the used paramotor sections. So check them out, and I'll be happy to give you any advice and to get you on the right gear. Give me a question. Give me a call if you have any question, guys. And I hope this 14 steps of this guideline will help you out to buy a new or used paramotor. Thanks. Take care. Making more educational videos and tips and reviews. So just subscribe to Fly High Paramotors on my YouTube channel. Hope this guideline will help you guys out.